Jamison, and I am an extension educator for Michigan State University Extension. I'm located in Macomb County, so I'm with Nancy and Rob Weber, if you've attended their sessions, as well as Cassandra. And I'm super happy to be here. And we're going to talk about raising money smart children. So next slide here. MSU Extension fully believes in the principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We know that human differences enrich our lives, our work, and our community, and we embrace our responsibility to be a resource for all, and our community and are committed to providing programs to all segments of our community. So this is our affirmative action slide. So it's nice that we have a diverse group, and that brings diverse perspectives. So I look forward to hearing from you all. So today what we're going to do is just do a quick little overview of MSU Extension. We're going to talk about money conversations. We'll talk a little bit about allowance and the pros and the cons of that, about budgets, activities to do with children at different ages and stages of their life, and a ton of resources for you to get more information. So that's the plan for today. And within these different topics, I will be also sharing with you some research so you can sort of compare where you're at with national surveys and polls. Okay. So this is just an overview of some of the things that Michigan State University Extension provides. As you can see, we have a wide range of programs to meet many different needs. So I'm actually from the Children and Youth Institute. There's 4 different institutes, and I'm in the Children and Youth Institute. So my main focus is working with youth from 5 to 19. So I do, and I'm actually on the Career Exploration and Workforce Prep team. And within that team, we teach financial literacy. So I do a lot of programs with young people about financial literacy, as well as parents and adults who work with children. So that's where this falls into. So I'm super excited to be here today. Oh, do we have a question? Let's see. Is there a raffle for the previous workshops? I believe they're giving a raffle at the end. And that would be...
What I can do is, because I think Sandra came in a little bit later, I can repost the raffle survey from the previous presentation really quick.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Thank you. Okay. So this slide is where you can access a lot of the information from MSU Extension. So as you can see, you can sign up for a newsletter, and you can sign up for a newsletter based on different topics that you might be interested. If you have a question, you can ask an expert. So you just ask a question, it will get directed to the right person, and then you'll get a response. So different events you can find out, you can contact different staff, and we have programs in every single county in the in Michigan, as well as the United States. So we are, well, that's through Extension, not Michigan State, but there is an Extension office in every state. And then there's also one in every one of our 83 counties. So we have, oh, that was Cassandra posting on there. So there's also a really great resource. It says remote learning and resources for those at home during COVID. So we offer a ton of online virtual classes that you can just click on and see just from this page. It'll take you right to the different programs that are taking place. So I wanted to do a little activity for those that are on to see how often, because it's so important to have conversations with children about money. The lifelong benefits of teaching children good money habits make it well worth the effort. It's vital for the healthy development of children that parents talk about their feelings and their values and establish a consistent approach to teaching children about money. And that happens through conversations. So I wanted to do a little activity to see how often you are having conversations with your child or grandchildren about money and the importance of saving and spending and saving. So there should be a button at the top of your screen that says annotate. So if you see view options, and then there's an annotate button, and on there you can do a stamp, or you can circle, or you can underline what you do. Do you talk about the importance of saving and spending very often, somewhat often, not very often, or almost never? So this gives us an opportunity for you to engage in this conversation. Or you can type it in chat, whatever you would prefer. Oh, okay, somebody did it. Okay, so they found it. All right, so sometime, somewhat often. All right. Number 2, another person said 2. Okay. And you can annotate, and that way I don't know who's saying it. So whatever you feel comfortable. And the annotate button is, you should be able to find it when under my name, which says, there's a down arrow. When it says viewing my screen, you're viewing Kathy Jameson's screen, and there's a down arrow, and it should say annotate. Okay, well, I'll give you another few seconds to see if you wanted to participate. If you're having problems, let me know so I can sort of direct you to it. Well, not hearing any. We have 2 people who said somewhat often. So that's good. Oh, here we have another response. After you select annotate, you then just clicked where you want to stamp. Annotate didn't work for me. Okay, so sometimes it doesn't work. It depends on different people's computers. Okay, we're going to go on to the next slide. So you can sort of compare your answer with others. So this was a survey done just recently in 2019, and it's a Parents, Kids, and Money survey, and there was 1,000 people surveyed, and how they answered. So let me clear these responses first on annotate, otherwise we're going to see all those. Cassandra, are you able to clear the responses? The annotate responses? Oh, here I am. There we go. I cleared them. So out of 1,000 people that was surveyed, and this is parent responses just recently, so 8% said never. They never talk about financial topics with their kids. The most popular was a few times a month. So sometimes, and then once a month or less. So those are the 2 most popular. Only 4% said they talk to their children about money topics once a day or more. And then 15% once a week and a few times a week. So it's really, really important to have these conversations with your young people. Let me get out of here. Let me get on annotate. I'm in annotate right now. There we go. Go to the next slide. And there's a really good resource, and I put the link at the bottom here, that is offered through University of Minnesota. And they have probably about 20 different questions. And it's a sheet of paper, and you can cut it up into little strips. And you can use these at meal times or on vacations or when you have family meetings or long drives. So it's just different fun conversational topics about money. For example, one of the questions that they have on this money conversations is, if you found $100, what would you do with it? So it's sort of a fun question that you can have with young people, but there's about 20 different money icebreakers, just little fun questions that you can use at different times to start having those conversations. Because the reason it's so important is, and I'm going to show you another slide, is most people learn their basic financial concepts, as you can see from this slide, from their parent or guardian. 47%, so more than half, that's where they're learning their information. And this is from Gen Zs and young millennials. So even the older kids are learning information from their parents. So when I say like Gen Z, that is like a 15-year-old to a 21-year-old, or as a young millennial would be like a 22 to a 28-year-old. So even the older children are going to their parents. But this is common, not just for older kids. This is just, if you ask young people where they learned their financial information, for the most of them, it's their parents. So you are a huge source of information. And one way of doing that is having those money conversations. As you can see, high school or college course, that's only 20% for the Gen Zs, and it was only 10% for the young millennials. So they're not necessarily getting it in school. They're getting it from family members. So that is the main source that they're getting their information. Because we do not have, it is not mandatory for them to take a financial education class in high school. So unless you teach it to them, they might not be learning it. So it's super important. This is another slide just to show where they're getting financial advice from. So 69 of the Gen Z said they're getting it from their parents, and millennials also. They'll talk to their friends, they'll go online, you know, they are getting it from other sources. But again, the majority are getting it from their parents. Not very many are getting it from their employer. Many of them are not seeing a financial advisor. Only 11% from social media. So you can see the bulk of the information is coming from the parents again. So let's talk a little bit about allowance. I want to try to do that annotate again, or you can say yes or no in the chat box, or you can unmute your microphone. First of all, let's talk about what allowance is. Allowance is when you give a consistent amount on a regular basis. So it's a little bit different than giving a gift or just doling out money based on request, or having them earn money. An allowance is a set amount that you're going to give them every week. So based on that definition, how many of you either received an allowance as a child or given allowance? You can say yes, no, or sometimes, and we're going to try to do either the chat or we'll try annotate again if it works for you. Okay, so yes, we got one yes. We got a no. All right. Did anyone have, growing up, a chart where they had a list of daily chores and maybe that was tied to earnings? That's a little bit different than an allowance. Okay, so let's, I'm gonna clear the screen here so we can go on to the next slide. So it's about half. Oh, let me stop, let me clear again and stop my annotate, okay. So some of the pros and the cons of giving an allowance, because a lot of times there's discussion about that. The new stuff, Mom just told us what to do. Okay. Some of the pros of having an allowance is it teaches basic money management. It does promote independence, and it teaches, promotes a sense of responsibility. It provides the practice of living on a regular income, so they know they're going to be getting a certain amount each time, and then that way they can budget for it and they can save. It teaches the value of money. It does create an atmosphere to encourage planning and setting goals, so they have to figure out what they're going to do with that allowance. And it also teaches children to learn from their mistakes. It encourages communication, but there are some definite cons to it. It's really important that that there's a consistent method between the parents. So it's really important that the parents together determine what amount a child can manage, and then that it's consistent. But you can change the allowance amount depending on what your financial circumstances are. Let's say you might have lost a job, or you cut back on hours. You could reduce the allowance, and then you would have a conversation with the child about why that money was going down. It can cause disagreement between the parents if they're not consistent and they don't agree on the amount. If it's linked to household chores, a child may learn that money is the only incentive to do things, that they don't want to do things unless they're going to get paid for it. Parents may feel pressured by their child to give an allowance. And then allowances may not be consistent if parents forget or don't follow through on the agreement. So it's really important. And the other big thing is you don't want to use an allowance as a power issue, as a reward or a punishment. Like, if you don't follow these rules, we're not going to give you an allowance, or we're going to take away your allowance because of this. So you don't want to make it a power issue. That's not what it's about.
So Kathy, I do have a question.
Sure.
Just in the age of technology, you have so many ways to like share money and to send money and things like that. Are there any benefits for opening up like maybe an account for your child or something like that, maybe through a credit union or a bank? Are there any benefits in that regard, especially if you're dealing with allowance?
Yes, what you could do is, and that would be part of the conversation. It's like, okay, we're going to give you a $10 allowance, and let's talk about how we should spend this $10. And then what you could do is say, okay, 5 of it we're going to give you for spending purposes, and the other 5 we're going to put away in a savings account, and we're going to automatically deposit it. So having that conversation, it's really all about having that conversation.
Okay.
And as you see from the next slide, and I was pretty shocked when I was doing this, the trends in allowance over time, and this is just over a short period of time, but it's almost over 10 years. Mm-hmm. So the percent of parents who gave allowance, so it was about 48% in 2011, and it's quite high in 2019. So it's at 68%, but there was a peak sort of at, in between 2015 and 26, where almost 80% were giving allowance, according to one survey. You have to realize this is just one survey. Now, this was what was shocking to me. And then you can sort of see on this chart how much they give. So 10 or less has been a pretty big even over all the different years. It's been over 50 or above. But notice in 2019, I thought this was shocking to me, 22% gave $50 or more. So I thought that was pretty high for an allowance.
Yeah.
But that's just maybe where I'm coming from. So you can sort of see, but if you think about it, if you gave them, let's say you could afford that, mm-hmm. and then you could really have that conversation, and then you could be putting some of that, let's talk about, maybe we want to have, out of that $50 a week, we want to put this amount in a savings account, maybe this amount in a school fund for your school, or maybe we want to invest it in a CD or an IRA for that matter.
Right.
So you could really have some serious conversations with young people, depending on how much, it doesn't even matter how much you're giving them, but, and also having a conversation about sharing, like, is there an organization you might want to donate your money to? So it's about, it's about the spending, the saving, the sharing, and then investing. So having those conversations on all those topics with that
Yeah.
allowance.
So specifically for the parents, are there any, like, can you kind of speak to the pros and cons of having a bank or a credit union versus like just a regular prepaid card that you get from like the store?
For the young people?
Yeah, but like from just so the parents have an idea of what might be a better way to encourage their kids to save their money, whether a prepaid card or like a bank or credit union.
Well, if you have it in a bank or a credit union, then they have an opportunity to get interest. It might
Mm-hmm.
not be a lot of interest, but then they have an account that keeps on building, and you're teaching them, they can see how much is in that account and how
Mm-hmm.
it's growing and what they're spending it on, because they're going to get statements. So you can use that statement as a learning lesson. Whereas a
Mm-hmm.
prepaid card, they're going to give them a prepaid card, and then when that card is done, it's done.
Okay.
I mean, there's still apps that you can sort of see, but with a bank and credit union, you're also establishing a relationship with them.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and you need that in order to, like, you need a checking account in order to get, then you have the ATM cards, and then you can have a debit card. So, and then, so there's other things that you can do with a
Right.
bank or a credit union versus just having a prepaid card. There's
Mm-hmm.
more lessons that can be learned.
Right. Right. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, this is just a free downloadable game that you could that you can download and play with the young people, and this is for the younger kids. These are the ones like maybe you're like 8 to 12-year olds, and it helps children make decisions about spending allowance money wisely. And what it does is you could use beans, or you can just have it's a paper and pencil. And what happens is they get like 20 beans, or they have to choose 20 items that they want to buy, and each item costs a different amount. And then you could do a couple of rounds, and then you can lower their allowance. Okay, so let's say you went with 20 and now you want to go down to 12, and how does that change your priorities? So it's, plus it has a lot of nice reflective questions. It's a nice tool that you could do with your youngster, and it's fun. And then there's also, you could do a third round where as a family you make decisions on how you want to spend it. So it's, again, it's having those family conversations. Let's also talk a little bit about budgeting, because that's a really important part of those family conversations. So for this one, I was going to do annotate, but it doesn't seem like it's working really well. For which of the following shopping occasions, if any, do you stick to a budget when you shop? So this was a survey, and this was some of the answers that parents provided. So they were much better at sticking to a budget when it was grocery shopping or holiday shopping than any other areas. But budgets are important in many different ways. And this was just a slide on what prompted, because more and more people are creating budgets, and they're finding, this was just an interesting slide, I thought, on what started them to start creating a budget. So 43% of them said they wanted to increase their wealth or savings. And by creating a budget, they thought that was going to help them. Debt was causing a problem. That's what made them start doing a budget. They wanted to retire, or maybe they lost a job, or was divorced. And then it was just the gender differences between men and women, why they budget or don't budget. And as you can see, women, they're more anxious, and that's why they don't do a budget than men. Men felt it was much more time consuming than women. And men also they're more likely to say they budgeted, but it didn't seem to help them. So, but it was very close, is that they don't have, the reason they don't budget is because they don't have much income. And what I want to challenge you is, if you don't have much income, it's even more important to budget so you don't get into debt and you can plan for those emergency savings and so forth. So this is a little activity that we do with the younger kids about budgeting. And it's a really fun activity. And what you do is you just take this sheet, and I can share this with you, or you can do a screenshot, and you use M&Ms. So it makes it fun. So when you open up the M&Ms, the different colors of M&Ms, and then what you would do is you would sort the M&Ms based on these different colors, and then you have a conversation. And each M&M could equal $1 depending on how old they are. They could equal $10, or it could equal 100. So of course, the higher the amount, the older the kid. And then you could ask them, is this how you would like your budget to look like? And how would you change it if the colors didn't matter? So then you would move them around. And then you would have them count up how much money is in pay, in an allowance, and in clothes, and then asking them, what other things would you like to spend your money on? So it's just a fun way to have a conversation using M&Ms. You don't have to use M&Ms, but that's what makes it fun. Whatever the kids might. You can use Skittles as well. So it's just another fun little activity. Another one for the older kids is Spartan Dollars and Cents, and that's a free downloadable activity. And this is more of a budget simulation. So what happens is they get a job, and they'll have an income, and they'll say how far away they live, and then they actually have to come up with a budget, and they have to pick on many, many different areas, like their personal hygiene, their rent, their car, numerous different things. And then also it's fun because then there's these action things, like these unexpected life events will happen. Like, let's say your car gets a flat tire, and then you have to take money away. So it takes about 45 minutes to do this activity, but it's another great tool to teach young people how to budget. And this is more aligned, and it's much harder than the one I just showed you, because it's much more in depth and it has many, many different categories. So now I want to talk to you about, depending on how old your children are, different activities that you can do with them to help teach and raise money smart children. So let's start with preschoolers. So with them, you could play, grocery store games, bank with play money. So using that, and then separating coins into piles by the color and size, and having them count up their value. That's always a fun activity. You could have children do routine chores without pay, such as setting the table or putting their toys away. Encourage them to start a piggy bank and put their savings in a jar. Read stories about money. And I'm going to have a whole list of different stories that you can get at the library, and different parent books that go along with them. Talk about things that they see on TV and how products are advertised. And it's really important to teach by example. So these are just a few different things. Let me see where we are on time. I know we're running a little bit short. Okay, we're at 1:15. I know I'll be done in about 5 minutes, so I can have another 10 minutes for questions and answers. So when they're a little bit older, here are some additional activities that you could do. Having children bring lunch money to school, so that way they have to make decisions on what they want to buy. Have the children clip coupons with you, and you could count how much money they would be saving by using those coupons. Encouraging them to comparison shop while they're buying something that they want. Explain the sales receipts and the bills for expenses that you pay. This is the time when it's perfectly fine for you to open up a savings account, even at the early elementary age, providing an allowance if you choose to do so. It's really important to discuss the difference between needs and wants so they know what's a need and what's a want. This is also a good time for you to teach them about sharing and the importance of sharing. And it's not just, contributing money, but it's also how else can they share? It's about sharing your time and sharing your skills. So those are just a few activities to do with the early elementary. Here's some middle elementary activities. So making sure that you establish rules and think about including interest when they borrow from you. Let's say in making sure that you only borrow an amount that they can repay. Playing Monopoly in payday games is always super fun. Reading books and magazines for youth consumers. And also, again, I'll be sharing that list with you. Teaching children to check prices online through newspapers and catalogs. And helping them establish an amount that they want to save and why they want to save it. Like, what are they looking for? Yes, these are definitely good to do with grandchildren as well. So it really depends on how old your grandchildren are. Allow the children to purchase something and that you think they won't like, and discuss the consequences. But it's really important not to blame or do judging, because they learn from their mistakes. Here's a few activities that you can do with teens. So working with them and comparing checking and savings account options at different financial institutions, and paying attention to what's the minimum balance they have to have. Are there any charges and what those charges are? Opening up a checking account and helping them balance it. Allowing participation in family financial discussions about what to buy. Maybe where do they want to go on, where you should go on vacation, how to save, how to cut expenses. They're not too young to be involved in these conversations. And each child's different, so knowing their own developmental stage is important. Helping them understand the use of cash versus credit. Encouraging a spending and saving plan. And encouraging and praising both planned savings for different items that they have and in saving for emergencies. Consider matching the amount the children have if you're able to. Match the amount the children save. So if they save a certain amount, matching that, if you can afford to do that. So those are a couple of activities to do with teens. So I mentioned earlier, there's a ton of books at the library that are great resources, especially for the young ones. And here's a whole list. And what's also great is you can download these guides from the consumerfinance.gov, Money as You Grow. And in these little guides, it will give you the key money concepts and learning objectives for each book. It'll give you talking points as parents. It'll give you additional activities. So here, there's probably a good 20 books, and a lot of them are just awesome. And I use them when I teach young kids, and there are lots of pictures, and they really teach some really great money concepts. Here's some additional resources, and when I'm done, I will post these all in the chat box. This first one is through MSU, and what it breaks down resources according to age group. We just touched on the resources, so there are a ton of resources out there, and many of the ones that I talked about today can be accessed through this first one. The University of Minnesota has done some great research on youth and money. That is a great great resource. This one actually, the second one actually has a little quiz for parents to see how well they're doing and where they can improve on teaching their youth about money. Child Mind is another great article. My Money Health. It has a wealth of information, that's through MSU, on all kinds of topics. And then lastly is that complete book list is a PDF, so you can download it. So those are some of the resources. And then I just want to say thank you for attending, and if you have any questions. So I'm going to stop sharing so I can put those resources in the chat box so you can access them.